His mic is off.
I'm ready for a drink. How about you?
I've been ready for a drink since this morning.
Okay, well, let's do it.
But it was really interesting watching because there are a lot of terminology that was like drifting around today.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get
the door when you hear the door.
Oh, yeah, great.
Let's get a couple of drinks, otherwise.
I could get a little food, too. I didn't get to eat because we're
Buenas.
practicing for the other panel.
¿Desea un vinito dulce de Málaga?
To eat, please.
Gracias.
Oh, look, some more conference refugees.
Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up? How you doing? David
Good.
Spitz. How
Chris
you doing
Lanaux.
from
Nice to meet
mParticle?
you.
How you doing?
Bruce,
Good seeing you,
see
Bruce.
Hey, it's David from mParticle.
Come on, sit down and join us.
Yeah.
We're about to get some drinks.
It's a good time of day.
You know, it's a long day of talking data. You can now drink and talk over your data. Think about what you want to do this evening.
Okay.
But no, it's pretty good. The notion today, around how this market's evolving, it's been pretty interesting. There's been nothing constant. I look back to last year. Last year there was lots of discussion about different technologies, etc. Thank you. What are we drinking?
KS.
Es vino de Málaga, típico de Málaga, dulce.
Oh, typico.
Oh, so this,
I don't know
think this
what
is
that
the
means.
local
The famous
sweet
sweet
wine.
wine?
This is sweet wine and
Cheers.
Malaga.
Good choice.
Here we go.
It's like candy.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Wow,
Delicious.
that is good. All right, so anyway, now that we have some cocktails, let's think about where we're going and where the data industry is going. You guys have all been in this industry for a long time. The things that I saw this last year was all about identity, it was all about customer data platforms, it was all about confusion. So a lot of my clients were sitting there saying,
No.
oh, gracias.
Thank you.
Feel free to pick, otherwise these things are going to get cold.
No fish.
No
We had-
fish.
we had
No fish. By the
It's
way,
not in a shell.
that would be the grilled calamari that I saw earlier today.
Does it glow in the dark?
No, it doesn't glow in the dark today.
No, I'm not interested.
But I had a bunch of questions, and you guys would be the ones who know the answer. Coming from the firms that you do your work across data platforms, et cetera, we asked a lot of our customers this year, and we said, so what is the most confusing thing in the market? They said, it's either identity or customer data platforms. Could you help us sort this out? So we went out and we talked to a whole bunch of people, and they came back and were like, there are a lot of things that call itself a CDP. There are over 100 platforms out there. So some of it's kind of there, some of it's not. We said, all right, we're going to try to define it and narrow it down, and then hopefully you guys will help. I think about it as a CDP platform has a couple of functions. Its job is to ingest from multiple data sources. Its job is to build profiles. Its job is to enable real-time segmentation. And it's there to support the activation across all the other channels and all the other tools. It's not a whole bunch of other things. When you think about it, how do you define CDP in your mind since you build one and make one?
Yeah, I mean, your paper on the topic was super helpful. I don't know if you guys, well,
It goes under the heading.
Acxiom was a co-sponsor with us of that paper, and it's it is the most downloaded resource on mParticle.com if anyone wants to check it out. But it clarified that
You're asking the bartender, he doesn't speak English.
Oh, right, sorry. But he'll like the paper too. But 4 out of 5 CDPs, I think you said, are not actually CDPs. So of that market of 100, there's maybe 20 at best. We would probably say there's like 5, and that the market needed that correction. So thank you, and I think you did a really good job laying it out.
So it's great that we went from 100 down to 20 and down possibly to 5. What's not in the CDP in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think it's filling a really interesting role because I know our clients are confused about just where does it fit in the stack. And a lot of times they're trying to figure out how to solve for an identity graph. And CDPs really are not an identity graph, but really helping consolidate that online presence to bring fidelity or focus onto the customer persona. So, I think there's confusion there between the identity.
So it's kind of another way of building that profile, but it's not a CRM, is it, Steve?
No, it's not. And if you take a look at most of the CDPs today, they don't really have the PII management structure that a CRM system has today. It's more about connecting data and then making that data actionable, but they tend to be pretty PII focused based on what I've seen. I don't know if you guys feel like PII.
Don't they combine both though? So they're a container.
Oh,
that
absolutely,
works with
yeah.
both.
You know, for the full continuum of identity, you know, from cookie and unknown users through deterministic identity. I think that's an essential component and part of what differentiates, you know, the four from the one in terms of what are actual CDPs. But the notion of, you know, the difference between a CRM and a CDP, you know, you wouldn't want, no offense if anyone's a salesperson, but you wouldn't want your salesperson logging into your CDP.
We don't let salespeople on the stage.
Okay, well, I'm just checking.
We're in this bar. Well, we let them in the bar for some more fun, but
But CRM, you know, that's a tool that the sales team or the customer support team logs into every day. That's not what a CDP is. You know, when you log into a CDP, what do you expect to see? You should probably see activity streams of data that's being ingested in real time. You see an audit trail of, like, you know, how it got there, where it's headed out. And, you know, you're seeing event level data. In a CRM, you're going to see a lot of profile information, maybe hundreds of attributes, but you're not going to see all that, like, event level data that you would typically associate with an analytics system. A CDP is that foundational layer that spans across analytic systems and, you know, other sorts of market
It's filling that nice gap where, you know, your management system is stopping, as you said, at the profile, but the volume, the velocity, the structure of data that you need to drive the personal experience in the digital world, that's where those older architectures aren't keeping up. And so CDP is a nice complement to the CRM.
Yeah, I would see
extending
the CRM as like
capability
an
of it.
application, very strong for a lot of B2B use cases, very strong for when there's a sales force involved, but there's a lot of other applications of data that don't involve a human intermediary.
yeah, you know, so it gets me a little confused because I think about it. It's like, all right, we know it's not a CRM, but why is it a DMP? DMPs, you know, store data. They store non-PII. They don't necessarily store the rest of the profile.
Right.
But is a CDP, does it have DMP capabilities? What makes one different from the other? And you're a resident DMP expert.
So we've talked about this before, and we've put on our own, like, kind of opinions out there about CDPs. Most DMPs, they don't use the core identity asset that a CDP will use. Obviously, I have an IDMP, an identity DMP, so I feel like mine's different. But most of them, you're still building profiles on top of anonymous IDs. And in fact, for years, we've treated that PII as like a verboten thing, like it was something that we couldn't touch. But now, as all these use cases are colliding, you know, we're going to see more and more DMPs trying to take on some of the CDP use cases as well. And you've seen, like, you know, Salesforce and Adobe have both announced that they're going to have CDPs too. It remains to be seen how that's going to plug into the DMP and how that ends up working. I mean, I guess it's omni-channel audience planning.
But if it all comes together, you kind of think about it. It's like, all right, if it's this container that helps them with identity, then what's identity? So we have these technology platforms, and we have this whole notion of identity. For me, that is recognition. How do I know you when you are authenticated? You know, you've come in and said, okay, it's okay to know me. Other times you come in and you say, all right, you're partially known. I've seen that browser. I've seen you in the store before. You've never walked up to me. So you've never formally acknowledged that I'm allowed to know you. So I can say, yeah, it looks like Steve, but yeah, maybe not. But there aren't too many people that look just like you. So I can treat you in a particular way. And then there are people like, I've never seen these people before. Who are they? And how should I talk to them? So I have these three different identity states. And I think one of the things that we try to get to is identity about a platform? Is identity about the data? Or is identity part of the process? And so you have been doing identity a very long time.
Yeah, and I think identity is part of the process to resolve those states, because what we're finding in the CDPs are basic unioning of records, but as you really try to curate that data, go omni-channel across the MarTech and the EdTech stack, the depth you have to go to is radically different. And so we like to see the identity management in front of a CDP.
Do you agree with that? Is that how you see it on
No,
your side?
I don't agree with that.
All right.
No, I would say when I think of the approaches to identity, on the one hand, you had, you know, these IT-led initiatives that were very concerned with, you know, fidelity of the data, right? And those exist probably, in every company at the conference to some degree. And then on the other hand, you had marketers who are very concerned with kind of the interoperability of the data, who were typical, LiveRamp type of customers, Neustar customers. They say, I want to make sure that this data is interoperable with the systems that I use every day, so they throw it over the fence to a LiveRamp, let's say. There's now a third axis in addition to that, which I'd say is the kind of resilience of the data. Rules are changing all the time, tooling is changing all the time, identity platforms are changing all the time. So that's like a third axis that identity matters to people. So CDPs productize a lot in that zone from very high fidelity first party identity graph. So I take issue with saying that a CDP does not establish an identity graph. That's assuming identity graph.
I think of it as it can hold an identity graph because it can take the
Yeah, exactly.
components to build it up. So yeah, you could say it establishes it, but I think of it as much as a container, but a different container than a CRM.
Well,
It's
I
like
also
a
think
first-party identity graph, and then when you want to, you want to build that, and it doesn't replace the other things. You want to take the identity that's established by your IT department. That's probably like the highest fidelity. We don't want to throw that out. Our customer at Overstock had been building their identity solution for 15 years, so we want to take that as the first priority in the cascade.
Well,
then we want to
you should
build.
have thrown it out. Just throw it out.
It's pretty deep stuff.
Yeah.
And then secondly, you have your first-party identity data, which companies of a certain scale have first-party data, and then they want to ping that out to a service like a Neustar and Acxiom to integrate that with a third-party graph. Those are all valid, and the CDP provides tooling that enables companies to build and evolve their own identity stacks.
So are people taking, what we haven't seen is that people just say, all right, I just need a CDP, I don't need a CRM, I don't need a DMP. What we're seeing more in the market right now from our enterprise clients is we're going to add this to that.
Yeah.
So when you think about why would they add a CDP instead of this is new money, not replacement money, we're not ripping one out, putting it, it sounds so similar. Why would you look at this as an extension? What are the use cases? Like what am I using it for that says I can justify this X dollar figure to extend that CRM database?
And I think as you're trying to really bring into focus across your digital channels especially, we see a lot of folks that have digital first marketing strategies. CDPs are logical next steps in their evolution to bring into focus that customer in the digital channel. And then evolve it from there as to integrating it into the rest of the stack, complementing the offline channels, the other channels that the CDPs traditionally have not covered.
But what about real time?
Yeah, that's absolutely a big one. I mean, I was going to say the first use case is probably, I just want to control my destiny. I don't want to have my identity stack outsourced to any partner, no matter how good they are. But absolutely this real-time layer, so on top of your existing infrastructure, so it doesn't replace your infrastructure. We never recommend that anyone rips out their systems of record, their tooling, the apps that people love, but it provides this agility layer for real-time use cases that those other applications don't support.
Well, I don't really want that static environment that's really designed to hold things being pinged every 30,
Right.
every fraction of a second. All of a sudden it's like we need to keep those separated.
Yeah.
So I need a place that I can use at the operating level versus one that I think I can use at the storage
And
level.
that architecture didn't exist 5 or 7 years ago. This is all very modern stuff, and most companies don't want to build it or support it.
Well, I think it goes to, we heard a theme throughout the conference on developing personal experiences, right time, right place, right context. And to do that, you have to have the performance, the responsiveness, the agility of the CDP to fuel things in real time.
You guys hear the Whopper detour?
No, what was the Whopper detail?
So Burger King was relaunching its app, and they wanted to let people know they could order a Whopper from anywhere, even McDonald's, their competitor. So when you go to a McDonald's now, you open the app, and it pings the CDP, and it pings the location service, and it pings the marketing service, it sends an offer to get a free Whopper. And you have to run within an hour to get the Whopper at the nearest Burger King. And so all that stuff is like...
And running to the next Burger King is the healthy part of the day.
That's how you earn the Whopper.
Very real time. Like you can't do that stuff, when you're hitting a legacy database because the person is only in that geofence momentarily.
What about attribution? Do you see attribution use cases as we think about how this market's evolving?
So as you look, as people start to connect all this data together, we talk about different graphs that they have. They have offline graph, they have device graph, they have identity graph. They have all these different graphs that they're trying to combine together and then use that to sort of piece these different data sets together so they can do attribution. I think that is the goal of all of this, right? The goal of all of this is I need to connect all this data together so that I can measure how well I'm doing and then build new strategies and tactics off of that measurement. So it's, I mean, it's a key piece of it, but you have to be able to connect this data together to do it. And, you know, we talk about real time, we talk about different levels of scale. Like the scale of the programmatic space is different than the scale of your website, is different than the scale of in-store. And so the requirements.
Is there a speed differential as well? Like how quickly I need to access this? Obviously, if I'm using it for a bidding solution versus I'm doing it on-site, somebody's coming through my website, I'm watching the customer journey, I see they do whatever they do, so app is one.
Yeah.
You know, it's very different though if you're playing in email. So we're playing in the email, but again, this seems to all
Actually, one of our customers, they send the email, and then they realize that people don't open the email right away. So when you do open the email, it does a real-time call, profile lookup to see, you know, what has Bruce been looking at most recently at our site? What it was, you know, even if they open the email a week later, it'll be personalized at that moment. So email is surprisingly real-time if you have the right architecture.
But I could do that. So the next step would be, all right, they open it. I want to know what you were looking at. I actually want to know where you are right now.
Yeah,
So now I've got
all
to
that
start
context is
pulling
there.
all of
Pulling
that
it all together.
data together,
Yeah.
and the context of location and media consumption. So I want everything to be a frame
Yeah.
that I can just populate, and I don't think I want to go back and hit my CRM database for that.
No.
Right.
Well, I mean, you take it one step further, you take it in-store. We have a client that is using us in-store to help them figure out like what offer someone is eligible for when they come in. And so using that and then trying to connect it to the history that you have with that consumer and then trying to give them an offer that's not worse than the one they just saw on your website earlier that day. Like that's, I mean, the mismatch is something that we're gonna have
Kind
to.
of going back into like what isn't a CDP or what shouldn't be a CDP. We had a client who we were talking to who was like, yeah, we want a BI tool and we could use a CDP. And it's like, no, a BI tool is not a CDP. You know, and you get others who are coming and it's like, oh, we're an email service provider and we have a campaign management tool and we're going to call ourselves a CDP. I think part of what we heard as we were talking to was like, look, the RFPs are going out, people are confused, they all ask for CDP, so we'll throw ourselves in the room and try to just get a deal done. You know, whatever they were looking for, since if they don't know what they're looking for, we can steer that conversation.
It's the same thing that we had with DMPs, right? Which is, I got to get a bunch of data together, I got to clean it up, and then I got to do some, for lack of a better term, cool shit, right? And so it's hard to just centralize on just the cleaning up of the data because there's no use case.
Are you saying there's no cool shit in centralizing the data?
No, because
It's just hard work?
That's a means to an end. It's never the end by itself. Like, I mean, unless you've got OCD and you really just want really clean data, you're going to want to clean the data and connect it so you're going to do something. So it's hard to just focus on that one bit. Everyone's going to want to dangle something else on so they can own a use case end to end, and that's how you end up with 700 people saying they're a thing because there's money and they do some of it.
Yeah, but that triggers yet another question in my mind, which is, when they first came out and they started to define these, oh, this is a marketer managed system, you can put it in, you don't need IT. It's like, I can't find my data without IT. Like, I'm a marketer, I'm gonna go out, hey, where's the data? I just plug that in.
Right.
This is not plugging in a phone.
Yeah, and as we all know, data is perfect as it comes in.
Yeah,
so
you don't need legal
you don't need
privacy.
to. That's right.
Yeah, I
Don't
mean,
need work.
they revised that definition because as we saw from the VIA presentation, it's not just about marketing at all. It's about products, about
love this guy.
operations. This guy's awesome. And, you know, you need to be technical. I think that's also part of the confusion with the CDP market is that on the surface, everyone ingests data, you know, normalizes it, unifies it, exposes it, and to a non-technical audience, it all sounds like the same shit. But to technical audience, they know the difference. They know like how hard data ingestion is, how hard data cleansing is, and CDPs are great at data quality and availability, and they are shit poor at insight, activation. That's what the application layer is meant to do. And so, going back, when you log into the CDP, you don't see pretty dashboards telling you what to do next. You see stuff about the data and how quality it is, and where it's coming from.
So I gotta ask, because, everyone says they have a DMP now. Like, you don't talk to a single vendor in the ad tech space who doesn't have a DMP, because they all needed to build a DMP or buy a DMP to do the other things that their clients wanted to do. You don't see that same thing happening with the CDP, whether it's real or just nomenclature. You don't see that everyone's going to have a CDP just so they can get data in the door?
Well, everyone probably does have a CDP. Now, whether it's homegrown or whether it's a productized solution, that's a question. But probably everyone needs, at a minimum, a customer data strategy.
Right.
And there's no harm.
Can we get that in a box?
Well,
little customer data strategy
some
box?
vendors will help. I mean, that's part of what they're buying.
be the
They're buying,
CDS that goes with your
you start
CDP.
with Google spreadsheets. They say make your data plan, with a Google spreadsheet or an Excel sheet, and map out all your data. Okay, how'd that go? If you want to productize that can be productized into the CDP. But at a minimum, you should be, building a data strategy that's very
Yeah.
I'm
robust.
glad you
It's an
said that.
evolution.
A platform is not a strategy, and a lot of people make that mistake. And you'll see this as we have like hundreds of these CDP RFIs.
It's not just the platform coming in. The other issue that we get is if you're going to give yourself a new platform, it's easier to put in a new platform than it is to change your process and change the way, we heard at today's event, people were talking about business transformation. If I'm going to transform, become data-centric, I need to change my process and not just the back-end technology. It's easy to say, all right, let's swap it all out and then go, this shit doesn't work.
But
Because
it's
we
funny.
need to
It's funny
change.
we're in a tapas bar now because one of the big drivers for CDPs is marketers and analytics folks. They want to try all the latest tools, right? They don't want to be force-fed with the same burger or pizza, no matter how good it is. They want to taste a little bit of everything.
Right.
And that challenge is not going away. In fact, I think there were some stats about every year the number of SaaS tools in the enterprise grows by 50% for the last several years. And you do need a platform to integrate all of those tools. If you want to be, if your engineers and your whatever outsourced agency you use is going to spend all their time wrangling data and integrating tools unless you have a platform-based approach. And why not? I mean, it's pretty inexpensive to rent a solution that already integrates all the things you're going to want to integrate now and in the future.
But I think we may be also at a point where we were with Siebel many years ago, where all of a sudden it was like, I need one of these, and you look and you realize, I can't just put in the tool. The tool will cost me X, but I need that
It's the
wrapper
ecosystem that surrounds
around
it.
That ecosystem. And the Siebel days, it was for every dollar of the tool, it was $5 of labor to make that tool work. Whether I in-house this or I'm not in-housing it,
still gotta pay for the labor.
you still have to make
You have the
this
labor.
work.
You also have the go back to the quality of the data coming in, right? I mean, you can ingest it, but do you have the right markers in your data? Is it complete enough? It goes back to the use case and really understanding the use case that you're trying to solve with that CDP and how it fits in that real-time
So
need.
actually, I have a question. This is a real question.
Yeah.
When you get a new acronym, and now there's money for a new acronym and people are going to go install a new system, one of the biggest problems that we see when we go into those situations is no one knows how they should measure whether they've been successful or not. When people ask mParticle as a CDP, like, what's our KPI? Like, how do we know that we did it right? Like how do you guys lead your customers on that journey?
You can usually justify the ROI of the platform on operational savings alone. So I was saying, you wanted to integrate this new analytics tool. You wanted to test this new BI tool. How many engineers was it going to take you to integrate the data? If we could just flip that on for you, you'll wash your face with the cost of the license, on that alone.
Yeah, but I don't think I would go there.
No, we don't. That's not what we do long term. But like at a very minimum, you're going to get payback from the operational savings. The real value is from the, but for this solution, you could not have done this. But for this solution, you could not have done, a geo-based targeting offer.
Personalization, use
Personalization. You could not have, had an email that you open and then you query the profile store and you get the latest information about that person in real time. Responses doesn't let you do that. You
So
could
it's
not have
about
done
lift.
that but for that
So
lift.
I think it's really about lift. When I go in and we talk to somebody and they say, what do you want? Nobody says I need to save money. It's not about I'm going to put something in and save 5%. Otherwise, this wouldn't be additive to what they're spending right now. What they're coming back and saying is, Can you make me better? Can you get me that 5 or 10% lift on what I'm doing because I can do better decisioning?
Yeah, but like we were talking about with VIA, we don't want 5 or 10% lift. We want transformational change, and the integration of, say, the help desk with the marketing programs. That stuff's transformational. When someone calls into the help desk and they already have the full customer record, they know why you're calling, exactly which app you were using that crashed on you a minute ago. Like, that really creates a delightful moment, and that level of data integration is beyond the reach of most companies right now without a platform.
But again, there's a savings. So maybe we saw another chart earlier today where they talked about those moments that delight, and when you start to lose somebody, and how you build loyalty. If the outcome is loyalty, having that time to service is loyalty. Having the accuracy to service builds loyalty, and that is going to drive how you change and transform the business.
Yeah, I mean, VIA, they use the data to get more cars into the right place to reduce the rider wait time, and that stuff's transformational. When you open the app, if a car is not there in 5 minutes, you're not going to take the ride. And so to be able to reduce the operational wait time by 2 minutes is incredible.
Do I need a CDP to do that? That's the question. Is CDP the answer? And is it the only new answer?
So I would say it's not the only answer. I mean, I think a CDP is again, it's a tool in the stack. It's a into the means of what you're trying to achieve. And that's why it's important to look at your entire data strategy and your data portfolio.
Which goes back to actually mapping to your use cases.
Mapping,
So
it all comes down to
which use cases do I need? I've got
That's
120
right.
use cases as an enterprise, and they cross acquisition, they cross retention, they cross insights and analytics and BI, they go into servicing. They could just go into making me more operationally efficient.
Yeah, anything's possible with enough time and money. And if companies like Airbnb and Spotify are using a CDP, probably a lot of other companies are probably going to want to adopt a productized solution.
So I guess another question is, all right, I've got this whole stack of things, and I need this to activate. What are when you think about the activations that are coming off a CDP, what are the most popular tools or other solutions that are being activated today? It's just like DMPs started off in paid media.
Yeah.
Why? Because there was a working media budget, and it was easier to get it paid for. What are the how do I get this paid for moments that brands are experiencing?
So when people ask us to integrate with the CDP, it's almost always email or like SMS that they are looking to activate, and those are channels that historically DMPs have not had that type of data. So those are the ones that I see. But I'm imagining that you're probably getting into like TV, because everyone's doing TV now.
TV and video is a whole new thing. You know what's really interesting? I hear something in the background. I looked over.
I smell something too. I don't know what that
I
is.
smell something, then I look over and somebody's rolling shit.
No way.
It's like a whole other thing that's going on. Excuse me.
Whoa.
I mean, Bruce, I was just wondering what you were doing over here, and then who are you?
Hey, I found the cigars.
Oh, those are cigars, okay.
Yes.
How did you get into rolling cigars?
I love my mother, I make for tonight.
You're making them for tonight?
Yes, in the cigar corner.
So there's a cigar corner tonight,
Yes.
and there's a cigar bar tonight, and you're going to be rolling?
I'm coming.
Do you have a lot of cigars?
Yes, it's mine.
Oh, look. Ooh, ooh. No.
Wow.
It's smelling.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
not too bad.
Wow. I'm going to save that for tonight, I think.
You know, this would be kind of nice.
Wow.
Hey, look.
Smells like from Cuba.
Oh, hey.
Refugees. Hey, ladies.
Surprise,
What's up?
surprise.
How you doing? We met earlier.
Come
Good
on
to
in.
see you.
Hi, how
Yeah.
are you?
Good to see you. Hey,
Good to
Bruce.
see you
Good
again.
to see you again.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, David.
Karen.
Hi.
Come up
Karen.
and join us. And
Hello,
and-
you.
Steve, Linda.
How are you?
And have another
Hi,
drink.
good.
We have a
Hey,
little bit of
Chris.
food,
Been here?
a
How's
tiny
it
little bit
going?
of
Are
food.
we interrupting?
Oh,
No, not at all.
We're just talking,
enjoying the
going
drink.
deep on CDPs.
Come around.
Oh,
Dos
gosh, really?
Por favor.
Must see.
Very
Okay.
good. What are you
Yeah.
drinking?
We are drinking the sweet local wine,
Isn't that great?
which
Oh,
I
wow.
was really expecting to be very clear and looks a little bit
think this is
dark and
Chris's.
tastes delicious.
It's yours.
Fantastic.
So it's not a bad thing. So our friend will help bring us one
Hola.
of these.
Gracias.
Sadly, it also does not glow in the dark.
Yeah.
Gracias.
And it has no fish.
No
So
fish,
Sorry
okay.
about
But
that.
don't challenge him for a cerveza. He doesn't have it. That's all we got.
Salud.
Cheers.
Yes.
Oh, cheers.
See you
Yeah.
all.
Good to see you.
Salud. Good to
All
see you.
right.
So what have
So
you
anyway,
figured out in your discussion?
We
We've
figured it all
just
out.
been sitting here, talking about CDPs and DMPs and CRMs. We haven't introduced CMPs or CPMs. No, wait. There's customer preference managers. That would be a CPM. No, there's a different kind of CPM.
But
so
have
we
you
are-
really thought about how that's impacting GDPR and CCPA?
No.
Big
but,
time.
But actually, one of the things that we are thinking about is what is driving a lot of this adoption right now is actually the regulatory environment. It was
Perdona.
2 years ago,
Oh,
it was
gracias.
okay to be lazy about how you manage data. And I think now, all of a sudden, there's penalties for not doing this. So you either do it right, or you risk something. So if it was the CMO before, what we're hearing now is the CFO chiming in and the head of compliance and saying, why don't you have something? Which also means that a whole bunch of people who don't necessarily have the same level of data experience are saying, what do I need? And the answer is, I need a CDP.
That's actually a really good point, because in order to comply and delete the data, you have to have it organized so that you could delete it.
Yep.
And I think that is something that a lot of people are going to be looking at more and more over the next 12 months.
And you mean I can't just delete it from one system and that system and that system?
And
lot of
is the
phone calls.
CDP really, this would be a great question of our friend at mParticle there.
Yeah.
So should the CDP be your central system for fulfilling those access requests? Or is it part of a larger network where you're having to remove or do that forget-me functionality across systems? How does the CDP play into that?
I think the answer maybe is a little bit of both. At this conference last year, we actually launched an open source project that any vendor in the world can go onto GitHub and use the same API to pass consent data. And we wish more people would use it. Probably about 30 vendors have signed on. And it has to be an API-driven approach. You can't imagine if the average company has 120 different SaaS tools that they're going to make a phone call to each one of those within 30 days for a deletion request for every single subject request. I think the CDP does sit in a privileged place in the data pipeline. It's foundational. It's a tag on the website in the mobile app. So you do want to make those decisions in real time before it enters your data pipeline, right? If there's another solution that could do that equally well, then they should do that.
So let me ask another question on that, because CDPs don't come with their own data. How do they do the data hygiene? How do I make sure that I have the right data and that the data is clean?
Right. And to me, those are upstream things, right? It goes back to that. CDPs, while they do have awesome capabilities for integration, orchestration, there's still some upstream feeding it quality data, doing your hygiene, your
Yeah, a lot of
CDI.
foundational work
Yeah,
with
adding
data.
in some additional attributes so that you're getting the richness.
Well, that's why I think the CDP market is really only 5 companies or so, because there's about 5 companies that do that, and then probably 95 that don't do that. So that it really depends on, and we call those foundational CDPs that are very focused on data quality, hygiene, transformation type of rules. And then you're right, the majority of them don't even
They can
bother.
build the
Right.
rules, but they don't necessarily have the reference data set.
That's true.
So companies like Acxiom, companies like Neustar, who have either built that or acquired that over time, I still need to plug that in somehow to make sure that those business rules are working off of, that somewhere there's hygiene has been done. Somebody has cleaned this data up to the extent that it has been cleaned up. So what we're seeing is you need to multi-source this.
Yeah.
That there's
You
a
want to get
lot
your
of-
first-party house in order, as clean as you can, and then you also want to bounce that against a third-party provider, whether we're talking about identity or data hygiene, like an Acxiom.
Even the basics,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
Are these things really rules driven, or are they machine learning driven, or sorry, AI driven?
Somebody had to slip that in. We're not going to really talk about AI here, are we?
It's just, when a lot of the CDP demos I've seen,
Yeah.
the story leans heavily on probabilistic, machine learned AI matching of data sets. And so that's one of those places where having a true set is really crucial, because otherwise, how are they finding patterns?
Yeah. No, we don't, our philosophy is that the AI should not live in the CDP. The types of companies we work with want best in breed of data foundations, best of breed AI. They want to, they want to work with Spark or SageMaker from Amazon. You're not going to build a better machine learning engine than Amazon, you know, so you shouldn't try. You should let, you know, customers, let the market choose. But again, you're right. I think the market varies. There are CDPs that are trying to build their own intelligence layer, and you know that's a whole nother business.
Which is something that really doesn't belong inside of that.
I don't think so.
And I think one of the things that we're seeing is every application has an AI getting built into it, and now we're faced with, okay, I'm going to have 8 different applications with 8 AIs. The data may be consistent, so
Right.
my CRM, my intelligence layer, my CDP will all be consistent, except it'll be interpreted completely differently.
Right.
So how am I ever going to be consistent across the customer journey if I've got 8 different brains?
Yeah.
And they got to have a cool name too. I'm gonna, when I get back home, I'm definitely putting Camarero in as a name for AI. That better than
Camarero.
anything else I've come up with.
I like that one. Camarero dude. Where's the Camarero dude? When we think back to last year, and we think about what was going on in the market, and now we kind of fast forward, what is new? What is, you know, how has this conversation among your customers changed in the last 12 months? And also, how do you think it's going to change in the months going forward? If I start with you down at that end.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, I think last year it was inquisitiveness. Now folks are moving towards more diligence, trying to understand how it fits in, how it fits in when you have a legacy footprint versus if you are maybe newer to market and you don't have the legacy footprint, right? So there's 2 different paths that we're seeing. The degree of personal experience is definitely driving, you know, how much of that personal experience curve am I trying to climb? Do I have those geofence, those real time? Am I really at that stage of my marketing life cycle and capability? Those are the clients that are pursuing.
Yeah, that's what I would say too, is that I think it depends on the client, but our clients are really looking to solve specific business problems. There's not anybody that's saying, I want a CDP. Well, there are RFPs that come out and say, I need a CDP. But in reality, if you talk to them and listen to what they're saying, they're trying to solve a particular problem. They're trying to solve for identity across all channels and across offline and digital spaces, or they're trying to solve for that real-time interaction. How can I get activities and make decisions about that in the moment? How do I do that? Or they're trying to solve for how do I bring all of my data together so that I have a single
So is
view
it
of
they're
my
not
customer.
asking the right questions, or they're
We've
thinking
gotta
that they
help
have
them
they're
think
thinking
through
that
it.
this is the answer to a question that they're
Yeah.
not
Exactly.
articulating right?
I mean, we all would love to see a silver bullet, and I think sometimes that's what
I,
people are looking
yeah,
for.
I think that's exactly it. And you might have a perspective on this because I know you wrote a paper. But I think as well, some people think, okay, I get that, and then what? Because it always feels like there has to be one new tool. And so are CDPs going to evolve to that new tool? Is the whole stack going to evolve? Or will it be another new tool that, you know, gets somebody closer to the Holy Grail?
Well, look, we had like the year of mobile was like 3 years of that. Then we had the year of AI.
14 years.
We've had the year of attribution for a couple of years. That seems that we don't quite get there because it's actually hard work. But in terms of the tools that we're seeing, I think it's a lot easier to look at the data layer and say, all right, I need this. This is foundational to everything we do. This is not a rip and replace thing. So I'm not going to go put in a CDP unless it's a single use. And this was something that we went through with DMPs. When DMPs were put in and it had a single use case, like, okay, it's going to marry to the DSP and that's it. It was a lot easier if you ripped out the DSP, you could rip out the DMP and you started over again. Once it had 2 or 3 use cases, it became really, really hard to kind of do that rip and replace.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like. I think that the CDP starts to get more integrated with the CRM. And at that point, it's like, okay, I'm taking feeds, I'm pushing data, I'm moving data. It's part of my foundation, part of my architecture.
Yeah, I think a big danger zone, though, is going to be, it goes back to the 100+ people that call themselves a CDP. I think you're going to have a lot of dissatisfaction coming because if they're not with one of the core 5 that really fulfill the mandate, they're going to be disappointed in the results. And so then it's how do you differentiate yourself and clarify what's going on.
So how much of that is, I'm the campaign management tool. Yes, I have to manage data because it's part of what I need to do in order to make my campaign management tool work. But if I'm now the CDP and the campaign management tool, it's a lot harder to rip me out. So are these applications trying to make themselves stickier and less swappable by claiming part of the CDP landscape?
If you look historically at what's happened in the past, just like we had DMP, DSP hybrids, you're probably going to see CDP,
CRM.
some CRM hybrids or something with
That's
some
what I was
kind of
gonna say.
channel conflict, but making things easier. And then given all the acquisitions that have gone on, as you guys are familiar with, I bet a lot of people are going to be starting CDP management practices. And there's going to be a lot of growth there as people sort of kind of.
Well, you kind of need an SI to get your CDP to do anything. You need somebody who's going to be able to do that
Wire
system
it in.
integration, wire it in, connect it to the other components.
And figure out what to do with it, yeah.
And part of the challenge is that a lot of the SIs
What's that?
are still learning marketing. They came out of the technical system integration world, and they don't know the marketing questions.
That's true. I mean, I have high hopes for them. I think the one certainty is there's going to be more tools. Well, the second certainty is more focus on security. The walled gardens are going to become more powerful. So, you know, these things are not, these foundational layers are not going away.
I don't think it's going to go away. I think we're going to see changes in how you use them. I also think in the mid-market, we're going to see where, look, I don't have enough money for 32 tools in my stack.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to start swapping things out,
Yep.
and maybe the CDP is the answer, or maybe a stack, and of course all the clouds. So we've now had the other part that last year we definitely didn't have, that 6 months ago we didn't
Yeah.
have. Salesforce announced a CDP, not a lot of detail. Oracle's announced a CDP, not a lot of detail. Adobe has a CDP, not a ton of detail. And
SAP.
SAP was the most recent one with not a lot of detail. So they're entering this market, but are they entering the market by announcing to freeze the market so people don't make a decision while they wait to get their application ready because they realize data is important? Or are they really committed to the data management layer? You look at Salesforce and say, hey, look, they bought Datorama.
Yes.
Right.
You know, they bought MuleSoft so they could handle all the integrations. You know, so they're definitely moving in a direction, but it's a poorly defined direction right now. Are you guys hearing anything about
Well,
them?
I also think it's an interesting, while they're moving in that direction, they absolutely need to get under control data management. You know, what we see with clients is that people don't start with a greenfield. They have a legacy history base they've invested very heavily in, it's performing for them, they're not going to throw it out. So as these bigger clouds come into play and want to be everything versus a bring your own best of breed, we just don't see that displacement occurring. Now, for the mid-marketer, the mid-tier marketer who's growing, who's evolving from spreadsheets, who has some homegrown systems and has realized the difficulty and the
Or
expertise.
they've had an
Or is
email
primarily
first
digital.
Or they've had a digital first.
digital first or email
These are
first.
great solutions for them to grow into, but as you move into that Fortune 500, particularly where you've got the brownfield of a footprint, it's a lot more difficult
And
to
where
replace
data
that.
really spans this
Right.
world of identity. I need my data across all of my channels. I don't need my data siloed. You know, we heard one vendor, they said, oh, you can store 400 million records inside of this ESP, except for the fact that would I really want to do that? And then how am I going to get it into all of my other applications?
Exactly.
So when you think about what comes next, if the CDP becomes a given, where do we have to start going? And what do we have to start changing next? You know, is it decisioning? Is it, you know, campaign management? Is it we need better BI tools?
Right.
We've seen such great examples of technologies that are emerging at the conference here. The question becomes, you know, what do we get next?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about like Fortune 500 or, you know, we talk about the Ad Age 200 being the people that we're kind of focused on. These are the guys that really want to get direct access to the data and they really want to own it themselves and do it themselves. And so what I expect happens is that CDPs and CDP-like technologies that give those brands and the marketing science people that work for those brands access to that data directly, building custom models that they're then going to want to push out. And then we get into, you know, media optimization and personalization as being the key, you know, use cases and drivers, because those two things kind of go hand in hand. And we talk about getting the right message to the right person at the right time, and then stop showing those messages that are irrelevant. Get rid of some of that spray and pray and focus on the touch points that matter and the opportunity cost of not showing those touch points.
And to be able to do it fast.
Yeah.
You could flip the question. I mean, Gartner recently asked marketers
Who are they?
Gartner,
Sorry. Okay.
Some other research firm about which technology they thought would have the greatest business impact in the next 5 years, and ML, was number 2, and CDPs certainly make it much easier to deploy machine learning models. Cleans up all the data. You still need other data sources, of course, to train the models, but it reduces the time like 50x. But number 1 was real time. Just like if I could deploy the same smart strategies faster before the data decays, and we're seeing a whole new generation of basically marketing automation solutions who do email but
I like
faster.
your real time, because last year, remember we were sitting here last year and they had the whole Star Trek thing going? And
Oh, yeah.
that was,
Yeah, I
that was
do.
kind of
That was
real
real
time,
time, right?
Those
That
were
was.
people like
What?
dropping in on us, and that was very real time.
That was very real. Or surreal.
What?
It was-
Or surreal. It was, so
Surreal
if you
time,
weren't
I
here
think.
last year,
No, this is my first
there was
summer.
a whole Star Trek
was a
theme,
real
like if
time.
maybe
Yeah.
Superman knocked on the hackathon, there was
Really?
this whole Star Trek theme going on. And they kept showing up in interesting
cool.
places.
Well, I heard they had the Superman at
They did.
Hackathon.
Yep.
They did.
Oh, wow.
He was,
Oh, I
he
saw
was
Spider-Man
real.
on the street out here. I wonder if he was part of it.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Maybe they're all in town.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. But I haven't seen those guys around. I don't know where they went.
No,
They,
no.
Did they go back into another time? Have they dropped in? Have they dropped in to another bar and they didn't like the bar that we were in? Like last year, where they really
They're not
liked
into
the
CDPs.
bar?
A different galaxy had better
They-
wine.
Oh, wait a second.
Well, last year the wine was whiter.
1512, point 7. We have traveled back in time and are orbiting planet Earth. Our mission is to explore ancient signs of disruption in the year humans called 2015. We are registering very serious readings from all sensors. Specified. Economic. According to our estimates, we entered a type of field. There is no known phenomenon which would account for these readings. Magnification. Eye contact. How about stop? That's
Captain, we're picking up audio.
on speaker, Lieutenant. Mr. Spock, Lieutenant Rivera, to the transporter room. Scotty, you have the problem. We appear to be in some sort of conference. A concert hall, perhaps. Spock, are you getting this? Yes, Captain. Captain, I think this is history in the making. You're right, Scotty. Smart data, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Disruption. Its never-ending mission, to explore strange new paradigms, to seek out new business models and new technologies, to boldly disrupt where no incumbent has gone before.
Dos, por favor.
Fascinating. They seem to have made it as far as CDPs.
Aye, Spock. Let's have a listen. But I tell you what, I need one of those cigars.
Thank you.
So, I would like to introduce, tonight we're going to go on a tapas bar tour. I would like to introduce our sponsor at Global Web Index, Tom Smith. Please come to the stage, please. So the tapas tour is one of the most favorite aspects of the experience because there's a lot of interaction. You'll get to know a lot of your fellow delegates. So it's really great that we get support to do this type of thing. And Global Web Index, if you look at the market research space in general, it's just a huge success story. They've been active in the community throughout the year, and I think what they're doing and enabling the direct relationship to the consumer, augmenting that first-party data, which these fine people have been talking about, is a wonderful thing. So please welcome Tom Smith, CEO of Global Web Index. Please.
Good afternoon. It's actually my first icon, personally, so I've never been on stage with a tapas bar before. It's great.
Here, get him a drink.
Yeah, I don't have a drink. Where's my drink? Anyway, I'm sure everyone's very keen to get to the bar, so I just want to, and hopefully you've seen our brochures sitting on the desk. I just want to tell you a little bit about Global Web Index and why we're getting involved with ICOM, also the, thank you very much.
Always present.
Why we're getting involved with the tapas night. So, Global Web Index was a company that I founded just over 10 years ago, and I was very lucky to be in the right time at the right place. I was working for a global media agency called Universal McCann. I was working with multi-billion-dollar advertisers who were all asking the same questions. They wanted to understand their audiences online, and particularly what audiences look like across multiple countries. So obviously the opportunity at the time was becoming enormous, a chance to reach, find your customers anywhere in the world on platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and increasingly things like Twitter. So at the time, the data sources that were available to me, I was unable to do that job. I was unable to provide that global view of customers and audiences. So I basically left to set up Global Web Index, and my solution for that was to run market research at massive scale. So fast forward about 10 years, and here we are. So today we are interviewing over 500,000 people a year, providing insights across 45 countries, and selling our data in over 170 countries. So the reason we're here, really, is because we are a global business. ICOM is probably the best place to find people who work in the global data industry, right? So we're here to meet some of our clients, celebrate with the industry, and also, as we talked about, we're increasingly connecting our data to other data assets in the market. So we're here to meet partners. Nobody has all the answers. Data world is increasingly complex, and we want to work with as many data vendors as possible. So perfect choice for us, tapas bar. So we want to hopefully get to see as many of you as possible over a drink and possibly a cigar. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Tom. Please give him a hand.